Hey, everybody, welcome back to another fantastic edition of the His and Her Money Show, where we make it our business to help you take dominion over your money and your life. And we're going to do that yet again with today's episode. We got a very special guest waiting in the wings, one of our faves, one of our contemporaries for the last 10 years, even though her career extends much further beyond ours. She's been a great resource and ally on this journey to helping people understand their money a little bit better. And she has a brand new book. Who am I talking about? None other than Farnoosh Torabi. And she's got a brand new book, her fourth book, called A Healthy State of Panic. And it's a quite interesting angle to take on this financial freedom journey that we are all on. But I guarantee you, it's something that you need to know and take in. So get your pen and paper ready. Get your notes app open on your iPad or iPhone, because I promise you, Farnoosh is going to bring wisdom and gold nuggets like she always does to this episode. So get ready to be able to take some actionable steps after this episode concludes. Let me go get Farnoosh so we can start this conversation and help you on your journey a little bit more. Hey, Farnoosh, welcome back to the His and Her Money Show. How have you been?
I'm great, Talit. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to reconnect.
Yes, indeed. You are one of our faves. We've been shoulder to shoulder with you for about a decade, but your career goes way past our little 10 years that we've been doing this. Some people might be being introduced to you for the first time right here and right now. So for them, would you mind saying hello and then kind of let them know what you're all about?
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I'm Farnoosh, and I am a financial journalist by trade. I started 20 plus years ago working in the trenches of magazines, Money Magazine in particular, where I got the opportunity to write about no load mutual funds and Roth IRA conversions at the ripe
The
age
good
of
old days.
20. Yeah, like a dream come true. And then I realized that I really loved to distill complex financial issues. And I felt as though there was this very underserved population of people, myself included, that needed help. A lot of the media was just talking to this like white 65-year-old man who had already kind of made it and was already doing well. And I thought, well, that's one slice of the world. And I made it my mission to get more educated on personal finance, uh, leverage my curiosity. And from there, really, it all started. And I've since had many opportunities to connect with people, help people through my writing, books. I have a podcast called So Money, which has been going on for 9 years, which you and Ty have graced. And I'm really excited for my next book, A Healthy State of Panic, which we can get into it. But I know I should love all my books equally, but I love this one the most.
Why? Why is this one? Because you've written some fantastic works over the years. Why is this one the one that
Yeah.
grabs your heart the most?
Because it brings my heart to the pages like nothing I've written. And, as I said, it's been 9 years I've been podcasting. And in that time, I haven't written a book. It's been 9 years since I've published. And I think I needed a break, to be honest. And I also felt as though if I'm going to return to a project like a book, I want to be able to, like I have with all my books, but mostly with this one, because I was writing it now as a mom for the first time. I had a lot on my plate, and I felt like I'd said a lot about personal finance that I felt needed to be said from my POV. And I wanted to have this book be more of a passion project, a creative project, and something that really connected with people, not just because it spoke to their financial lives, but because it spoke to them as humans, as people who, like me, maybe grew up terrified, afraid, who are still afraid of a lot of the uncertainty in the world. One of the things I recognized as a financial expert through my work, I'm sure you've recognized this too, Talit, is that when we're talking about money, we are talking about life. And I wanted this book to be an opportunity to go in these other realms of our lives that money touches upon, like relationships and career and personal health and wellness, and show how connected money is to us in all of these ways. And also to bring some humor and levity to it, because that was also what was sort of missing from my previous books, was being able to show that side of me, which maybe people don't know, but I was a big theater rat. I directed plays in college. I thought for a period of time I might want to pursue entertainment. And I did some stand up comedy in my late 30s, which I hope to revisit now in my early 40s.
Okay,
But
wow, that's
yeah,
breaking news. I had no
yeah,
idea Farnoosh
newsflash,
did
newsflash.
stand-up comedy.
Yeah. And actually, that's how this book came about. I had thought about writing a memoir, and then I did this stand up comedy stint, and I put a video up on Facebook of like one of my acts, and a literary agent saw it and said, "This is really interesting and funny. Do you have more material like this?" And the material was really me exploring like the kookiness of being raised Iranian American and the fears that I was almost forced to inherit because my parents were terrified, as they probably should have been, as like foreigners in America, and how they purposely raised me to be afraid and skeptical, and how that kind of led to a lot of like tomfoolery and silliness and getting into trouble. But she said this is sort of a foundation for something really big potentially, and that you were this scared girl and now you're this woman who has this career and seems to be doing things without fear, but you have this really loving relationship with fear. Like, let's explore that. And that essentially became a healthy state of panic.
It's almost, it doesn't seem, it seems like an oxymoron, a healthy state of panic,
Yeah,
because
that's the
most
point.
times the word, I
Mhm.
know you're so good with your words. I know you for a while now, but panic is something that we want to run from. Nobody wants to experience panic. Definitely nobody wants to run to it. And nobody thinks that 1% panic is healthy. So what are you trying to get us to understand by enticing us to believe that there is such a thing as a healthy state of panic, especially when it comes to this thing called money?
Yes. Well, the title says panic, but the book is really about fear, and panic is sort of a cousin of fear. And a healthy state of fear just didn't have as much of a nice oxymoronic ring to it than a healthy state of panic. So, hey, I got to sell books. But the book is really about looking at fear as a potential tool and friend in our lives. I'm a person, I think many people listening would agree, I would bet that we all think that all of our emotions are valid. Like when you're sad, is that not valid? When you're angry, is that not constituted as if you're happy and you're joyful, we feel those definitely are feelings that we feel like we should give our lives space. Yeah, but I also think that other emotions that we've categorized as bad also require and deserve some attention. And fear is one of those emotions that we have for centuries been conditioned to believe is toxic, is bad. If you feel fear, oh no, you're not being courageous. You're not being who you should be, and you're not being successful. So I've never been able to be fearless, Talent. I don't know about you. I mean, I think I've done things that exhibit fearlessness, but I think that if I'm being honest, it's because I've been really clear on how I can use fear. Like I've done the scary things. I have built a business. I have invested. I have gone in front of hundreds of people to speak. It's not because I abandoned fear, but it's because I recognized I was afraid and I worked through it and I unpacked it and I tried to figure out like, why am I afraid? It's an exploration that some of us can't afford not to take, because when you are afraid, it is very personal to you. It is a emotional signal that surfaces that I think sometimes has so much wisdom to impart about who you are, what you care, what security means to you, what success feels like to you, what you value. These are the questions that deserve answers. And fear is almost a vessel to getting closer to those answers, I have found. And I think it's true too. Other people have done it, maybe unknowingly. I've interviewed a lot of people on my show who are like, I got really terrified and then I did the thing. And I think in the middle is where this book lives, is like you're terrified and yet you still did the thing, but how? You weren't just fearless. You actually probably had a really emotionally intelligent confrontation with your fear that you're not giving yourself enough credit, because sometimes it is also a split second. You know, it's like a minute, a second goes by, but something is happening, something is being processed. And the book kind of zooms in on that process.
Now, how, in your estimation, you've done this work as a personal journey, you've also done the research to help us and your readers go through this journey as well. And it feels like fear, panic can be like a knife, right? You put it in the hand of a doctor, he can heal you. You put it in the hand of a robber, he can hurt you. And I feel like fear and panic can be that as well, because you mentioned growing up as an Iranian American and really inheriting fears from your parents based on being in this country. And me growing up, both my parents, I got some of that too, especially my mom, because my mom came from nothing and she made something out of herself, but she still had fears from her past, growing up in Jim Crow South of Mississippi, and she left and moved to Chicago, and all the things she had to figure out along the way. And sometimes fear can be used to make you super tight, or fear can be used as, man, I don't ever want to get back there, so I'm going to hustle with all my might and make all I can and live a different life. How do you make the distinction between fear being a weapon that you can use for your good, or fear being a weapon that can harm you in reaching your full potential?
Well, I think it comes down to 3 steps. The first is to recognize when fear shows up that it deserves some space. I think that when we tend to use fear unhealthily, which is like, I just find that as when you experience fear and you impulsively react, you do the thing that feels immediately satisfying. I want us to have a little bit more patience with the fear. Don't react right away. Don't assume that you have to freeze, flee, or fight right away. Now, I'm talking about specific types of fears in the book. So if you like fear your danger because you're in a dark alley and you hear something and like run, I'm not telling you to take a second, but in the book, I'm talking about these fears that show up in these kind of like personal, professional, financial crossroads in our lives when we're about to enter a new relationship, a new job, start a business, close a business, invest, not invest, ask for money from our boss, et cetera, et cetera. Like all these like adrenaline inducing moments where there are stakes, where you can make a decision. And on the other side of that, there is potential risk. And when those kinds of fears show up, I think that the way that you can be more in control and feel more empowered and actually do the right healthy thing is first to recognize that fear deserves space in your life. It is not this thing that wants you to react impulsively, but maybe it has something important to tell you about what to do next. But how do you get there? Second step, ask it questions. Okay, so the fear shows up. Where did you come from? Is a healthy question sometimes, because like I discovered some of my fears were inherited. And when you discover that, you go, oh, maybe this isn't a legit fear, you know? But in that exploration, you learn a lot about your past. You learn a lot about your influences. Like, so sometimes the goal is not to always like do the thing with the fear or do or believe in the fear, but it's to just understand the fear. And you ask it questions. You ask it, where did you come from? I love to ask fear, what do you want me to protect? You've shown up for a reason. I'm feeling uneasy for a reason. There is a purpose that fear shows up. You and I would not be podcasting had it not been for the, centuries of fear showing up for us and protecting us from the Stone Ages. It was like woolly mammoths. And today it's like, a toxic boss or a, a narcissistic partner. So I believe that you have to be curious when fear shows up and ask it these questions. And really, what you're getting closer to are these important answers that can inform your map, your roadmap for how to, if you decide you want to continue that path, how to do it in a more self aligned way that's respecting what you want to secure, that's respecting your values. And no two paths are going to look similar. Like, I'll go back to stand up comedy for a second. I did the thing and it's scary. And someone might ask me, well, how did you decide that it was still something worth doing? Like I'm terrified, but I'm going to still do it. So how do I know that I'm willing to afford the risk? Well, I didn't just get up on stage and not have a plan. And I know that culturally in the comedy world, I've heard about like some of the greats have talked about like if you have to take a comedy class to tell jokes, like you're not that talented. How could you be? Like you don't have it. And so I could have like listened to that and been like, yeah, I just don't have that kind of fearlessness to go up on stage and not be prepared and kind of just like wing it. And so I have to do it my way. The fear is telling me that I want to protect my dignity while I'm on stage. And I know I'm not going to get all the laughs, but I want to at least go up there and feel like, I did the best I could because I came prepared. And so my pursuit of stand up comedy, which is scary objectively, is that I took a 8-week class to learn how to write a joke. I practiced a lot and I invited mostly friends and family to sit in the audience. There were no strays coming in off the streets of New York after 18 drinks who were going to throw tomatoes at me. So I did the thing that is scary, but I did it my way to protect what I wanted to protect in that moment, which was my feeling of success, my feeling of like preparedness and I wasn't, again, it's me and others would have been like, oh, well, that's why you don't have a Netflix special yet because you're not really that talented. But it's like, that was never the goal. The goal was just to prove to myself that I could do this and do it in the Farnooshiest way ever, which is like, I'm a real nerd and academic and I'm going to take a class and I'm going to practice, whether it's stand up comedy or investing or real estate. Like, you have to become a student. And I find that fear loves to hang out. It's like mold. Mold loves like dampness. Fear loves uncertainty. Fear loves areas where there are holes, there are educational holes and there's gaps. So sometimes when fear shows up in your life, it's really a calling to learn more. And that's a way to do the thing that's scary, but do it with more confidence. And the only way you got there was because you recognize you were afraid.
Now, why is it worth the journey? This journey to understanding your fear, asking fear questions, trying to trace the roots of it to come back and help you in the present and in the future. Because some over the years, sometimes when you have a certain fear, either you create this coping mechanism, like when that thing shows up, you cope a certain way, or you ignore, or you cover up. We don't necessarily naturally embrace fear. So you're telling us to do something way out of a lot of people's paradigm. Not everybody, but for a lot of people's paradigm. Why is this journey worth it for our future?
Well, I'm the kind of person who, in any circumstance where I'm about to embark on a journey that is high stakes or I know there's risk, I want to feel like I'm doing this in a way that really speaks to my values, that I feel like I have done the research to be able to do this with confidence. And the way that I get there is I listen to fear because fear really is like a personal signal inside all of us. And it's an abundant resource that is constantly showing you who you are. And I know that might on the surface seem like, well, it's showing me I'm a coward because we've been conditioned to believe that fearfulness is cowardice. But I want us to reframe and see fear as a mirror to what we want to protect, what we value, what our goals are, and who we really are in terms of what makes us feeling secure. Those things are important to, I think, everybody. I think those values are universal. Those wants are universal. Fear is personal, but it's showing you the universality of what we want when we walk into circumstances that are uncertain, that are scary. And this book isn't about how to like live your life so everything works out perfectly. This book is about how to march through life with all of its uncertainty, through all of the fog, when it is scary, bringing your fears with you because they are constant reminders of who you are, what you want to protect. I sound maybe like a broken record, but I've seen this play out so much in my life and in others' lives. People that we revere, that we say, "Oh my gosh, they just seem so fearless." But the truth is that no, they just have a respect for their fears, and they have learned how to find the wisdom. And by that, I mean they've learned through fear what they care about deeply. The world is very noisy, Talit. Like, it's very easy to do things because you're following the herd. You're just doing it because you feel pressure, or there's a lot of confusion, so you just make an impulse move. Like you go into a store, you got to pick a shirt. Like there's 1,000 shirts. Like you're just, if you're like me, you just like either leave empty-handed or you like pick something and then you have buyer's remorse. I think that I'm setting us up for more success in those moments when we feel like we we don't know what we want. We don't know what's going to make us happy. So I have some shortcut questions in the book. If you don't know these things and there's a like a rumble of fear behind it, like I'm going to make a choice and I'm going to regret it. I'm going to make a choice. It's going to be the wrong choice. It's going to backfire. It's like listen to that fear. Like what is it telling you about yourself? Why are you afraid? Where did this fear come from? It's sometimes an exploration that takes seconds or minutes. The more you know, and it's really just getting you to get to know yourself a lot more. And I think that's something that we all just want more of these days, especially when we feel like we're being pushed in so many directions.
I love the fact that your book is super practical. You give us things to do, not just things to think about. So let's come to a practical point here for this episode, because you've done something a lot of people like have in their minds to do, but panic, fear show up and stop. So several years ago, you had to make the decision to go into full-time entrepreneurship. It was kind of building within you, and there had to be a decision made. Now you are self-proclaimed scaredy cat. You deal with fear ever since childhood, and you have to go through that journey. A lot of people listen, a lot of people contact us like, how do you know when it's time to either like make a career shift and like maybe from one company to the next, or from being an employee of someone to becoming an entrepreneur? So take us back. I know it's been a while, but take us back to that journey that you went on and how you had to go through the steps of dealing with the fear from multiple directions that are involved with making such a drastic choice.
Yes. Well, the book travels through 9 different fears. When I lost my job, what I was feeling most there was the fear of uncertainty. And the book goes into like the fear of failure and the fear of money and the fear of loneliness and all sorts of other, I think, universal fears. But the fear of uncertainty is what was really cropping up for me at this juncture in my life where I'd gotten laid off during the Great Recession in media and figuring out what am I going to do next. And initially the fear was like, I guess you're just going to go home and live with your parents, you know, like, I guess that's it, and I'm going to be really honest. Um, I felt like I'd lost a sense of my identity. We often put so much weight on a job title and what a job represents. I was the senior correspondent at thestreet.com. I worked with Jim Cramer every day. I had a very visible job. I was going on network television. And then that gets stripped of you like immediately. There's no time to plan. It's just bye. And I went through all the motions. I went home, I cried a lot. I didn't leave my studio apartment for about 7, 8 days. I just kind of ate a lot of dumplings and watched Bridget Jones' Diary. And I allowed myself to sort of wallow in my misery, which I don't regret. I think everybody deserves to sort of like feel the feels. But when I had to sort of come to the surface, because we all do. I mean, I knew enough to know like I couldn't just stay in my pajamas all my life. I had to kind of make a big decision. The decisions for me were 2 things. One, either try to go find another job or try to leverage what I'd already built as a thought leader and as a journalist into maybe potentially a business, like an actual production company where I'm freelancing mostly and contributing and calling my own shots. And that was scary. But ultimately, I realized that when the fear of uncertainty shows up, and pursuing entrepreneurship has a host of uncertainties. Like, am I going to make money? Is this going to work out? Will my parents understand what I'm even doing for a living? Which they still don't, but you get over that. But going back to corporate was also uncertain. And I think that when fear shows up, sometimes the trick is to look at the 2 different fears that you might be facing within that same realm. Like on the one hand, there's the fear of like, I could go back to working in corporate and that's uncertain. But then there's also the fear of entrepreneurship, which is uncertain. And your job now is to sort of like measure these two fears. I think um, with the fear of entrepreneurship, what ultimately gave me confidence, more confidence in the fear of going back to corporate, was that I had more agency in that role as an entrepreneur. When I worked for a company, I can't prevent another layoff. I'm just, one person in a giant organization. But as an entrepreneur, I have the potential to have more agency, control of my time, control of how much money I make. I felt confident still doing that because I had built up some savings too. That's not a little thing. I think when you're pursuing something as scary as entrepreneurship, because you're worried about the finances, that's not a little thing. And I think you need to pay attention to that fear. So don't just quit your job and start the business. You got to maybe continue the job while putting that business together, or you go part time and then put the business part time. And, you sort of juggle both until you feel confident to have enough financial runway to do the entrepreneur thing. And, you know, really in my life at the time, I had built savings from all these like freelance gigs that I'd been doing in addition to that corporate job. So in my mind, I think I was always ready to like down the road. I was like, the dream would be to be an entrepreneur. And then I just had to do it because I got laid off. And I was like, well, there's really no other work for me to do full time, even if that's what I want to do. And truthfully, even if there were an abundance of jobs at the time, I probably wouldn't have pursued that pathway because I had just experienced the fear of a layoff. And really, it was a wake up call to like, nothing is certain, even in the corporate world. So maybe you do this thing over here, which has a lot of uncertainty, but you have a proven track record because you've been doing this sort of like slowly on your own for the last year. You've been saving. And if it doesn't work out, you can go back to, I guess, working for the man. And that's the other thing I want everyone to recognize from this story is that when there is uncertainty in your life and you choose door number one, um, be prepared to and be excited for door number twos and three, doors two and three, because nothing usually works out in life. And so having a backup plan that is solid, that you can feel really good about as you march through life, trying to pursue the initial thing is really important. It makes you feel like you're not taking on as much risk. So I was okay. I was like, look, if this doesn't work out, I'll, I'll go back and hit uh, monster.com, which, I'm really dating myself here, but that was the job posting board. I hope that makes sense, that story. But yeah, I think I just had to sort of like weigh the two fears, realize too that I wasn't going to just like do this blindly. I wasn't just going to pursue entrepreneurship. Without a plan, right? I had savings, um, and I took all the jobs that I could, until I figured out what is the structure of this business? What are the things that I really want to hone in on? And that only happens when you put yourself out there.
Before we let you go, one other aspect I would love for you to talk about, because you're taking us on quite the journey with these 9 different fears that you're walking us through and how to deal with them appropriately. After this, you just went through with the entrepreneurship journey, uh, then you became a spouse, then you became a mom. Talk about how doing this work, when you're making decisions collectively now, like before, you just had to wrestle with you and how you were seeing it. And now, a lot of people that are listening, they're in relationships and married and so on and so forth, parents, and there's other people that have to go into the equation in the decision making. How has this journey affected you in those roles, spouse, mom?
Well, it's gotten me very good at creating boundaries. You have to. I mean, when I get afraid of not being able to do it all, I don't do it all. Like the fear is like, maybe you should stop a little bit and slow down and actually just focus on the things that will have an ROI, and not just because you feel like you have to do certain things because people expect them of you. And so you won't find me on TikTok. I mean, you might, but I'm not really very good at it. And I'm okay with that. It's like, okay, that didn't take for me. I don't travel a ton as much as I used to, and that's okay. I have I've shifted the business model around. So I get to do more virtual work. I did the podcast, essentially started that 9 years ago because I had just become a mom. And up until that point, I was on a plane every other week. I was doing all sorts of like long hour work. And I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. And it's not just because I feel tied to motherhood and that's like bringing me down. It's like, no, I actually love that I get to have a, I get to be a mom, and I'm confident enough in my career to know that I can make these pivots. It's not going to mean that I'm going to make less of an impact or less money, but it just means I have to work smarter and differently because my life is changing and my life deserves that reshaping within my business. And so I started the podcast, which was great because I could do that from home. I was more accessible to my family. I could do that within the hours that I wanted to. And this is how I've done it. I think that's hopefully answering your question. It's like, how do you take into consideration all of these real important aspects of your life when you make decisions? And I think it's about knowing your hierarchy of of what your definition of freedom is. And I talk about this at the very end of the book. It's the last chapter. It's called the fear of losing your freedom. And it's not like the fear of losing your, your right to vote or, your constitutional powers. Although I've bookmarked all of those articles on my computer. I want to learn how to do that. But it's more about how to protect your sense of autonomy, your sense of self. And that can get easily lost in the grand scheme of life, right? I think I hear this a lot from moms, like, I've forgotten who I am. And you're constantly in service of other people. But how do you create and design a life that doesn't abandon the people you love and the things you care about, but also brings in you back into the fray, like the things that are important to you. And that's going to be a personal roadmap for everybody. But the book goes into some of the ways people I know and respect have done that, the ways that I have done that, the ways that I have put together this career, which may just seem very serendipitous and like, I just kind of like played the game of life. But I had very early on in my 20s the foresight, because I saw other older women going through it, how it would be difficult. It would be difficult to work for an employer in media and try to have a family and be present for your job and your family. And I got scared and I thought, okay, well, if that's my future, if I don't do something about this is not going to change, right? Like, I can't change corporate policies, but I can change the way that I start to think about my approach to my career. I don't want to give up on the family. I don't want to give up on my career. So what do I do? And I had the benefit of foresight and I had the benefit of time to plan out a new blueprint for myself. But it was one that I credit fear so much for, because it was with that initial panic that I got catalyzed to do something. And I think I'm living that dream today.
That's awesome. Now, we always say around here, personal finance is personal before it's financial. And your book helps us deal with the personal, which leads into the financial. So let everybody know a little bit more about what they'll find inside the pages of your brand new book, A Healthy State of Panic, and where they can get their copy.
Thanks, Talit. Yeah, this book is a culmination of my 40 years living afraid and somehow getting myself up out of bed every morning and putting one foot in front of the other and making really high stakes decisions as a grown ass woman. And you can too. Or man, I think this book is for you if you are at a crossroads in your life and you want to do scary things and you know that being fearless is not necessarily the shortcut. You want to have a more emotionally intelligent relationship with fear. You want to feel seen. This book is, I tried to bring in a lot of stories beyond my own that illustrate how every single person can be successful with their fears. And if you want to follow a kooky family, hey, that's in there too. A lot of characters, myself, my Persian mom, my Persian dad. But mostly I want people to walk away knowing that when fear shows up in their life, there is no shame. It's just opportunity. You can read more at ahealthystateofpanic.com. If this is airing before the book debuts on October 3rd, you can get a lot of nice bonuses for pre-ordering the book. And that's all again at ahealthystateofpanic.com.
Awesome. We'll be sure to have it linked in the show notes of this episode so you guys can do what you need to do to go on this journey. You need to. Farnoosh, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come by the His and Her Money Show and give us this insight today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Talit. It's been awesome.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another edition of the His and Her Money Show is in the books. And speaking of books, please go get a copy of Farnoosh's brand new book, A Healthy State of Panic. You will not regret it. Thank you for coming and listening and watching. And that's all we got for this time, guys. Now it's time for you to go and do the work. Don't just hear what you heard, but do what you need to do. We'll see you next time.